Hello everybody, this is Money Mom. Welcome back to the channel. Today I wanted to talk to you guys about the economy during the 1980s. Let's get started and talk about it. How many of you think the 1980s were the good old days? I remember the wonderful music, the fun movies, and also I had awesome hair back in that time. But I do remember a lot about the economy from the 1980s, but I also did a little bit of research, and I really encourage all of you to do research and compare decades of how the economy was. I think it's quite interesting. So I remember in the 1980s there were not a lot of jobs. The main thing is, especially the early 80s was really tough. Like 1981-82, the unemployment rate was 10.1% was the unemployment rate. The interest rates were 21%. That is quite high. So buying a home, you know, you would have had a quite high house payment in that situation. Now I compared it to now. 2020, the unemployment rate was 14.7%. But now in 2021, the inflation rate is 5.5 and the unemployment rate is 2.4. And by the way, these are things that I did read, guys. I ask and encourage all of you to do your own research because I'm not an economic expert, and so these are just things that I read, and so it's just kind of a baseline to kind of do a little bit of comparing. That being said, I just remember during that time that there were not a lot of jobs. I remember in the early 1980s, my dad, throughout the 1980s, would kind of get laid off on and on, or off and on, and while he did that when he was working, he made sure to pack and set aside a lot of savings so he'd be prepared if he got laid off again. That's why he worked a lot of side jobs. As many of you know, my dad was a truck driver, but it wasn't so easy to get a job back then. I do remember that. One thing I remember is I moved to Dallas, Texas in 1988, and the apartment I rented in, it was cute. It was 582 square foot, and it only cost me $300 a month. But within 2 years, that same apartment was $450. When I first moved to Dallas in 1988, it looked like a ghost town. There were tons of empty apartments. I worked at a private school, so I was able to get a job, but you know, things during that time, it just was kind of quiet. The town of Dallas was really quiet in 1988. But then by like 90, it started to kind of build up again. But I just remember, I wanted to share that about the cost of the apartment. But we're in 1980s, and I remember this myself. It was really tough because you had stagnation, you had basically inflation where things were costing more and more, but there was unemployment and high interest rates. And when you put all that together, it's really tough for people to make a living and thrive during that kind of economy. The good news is things did get better. There were tax cuts and things, but it took time. Nothing's done overnight. You know, we had a deficit back in that time, and we had basically, you know, like I said, the unemployment and the inflation, it made things kind of rough. I would love to know, oh yes, and we also had business bankruptcy during that time, and basically the early 1980s was a time of deep recession. And farmers were also failing because of, you know, the crop pricing and the interest rates. So these are just some of the things I know. I remember living through some of this stuff, especially not having a lot of choices for jobs, and prices really seemed to be going up back then. And so you had kind of all that going on at the same time, and it made it kind of tough. So let me know what you guys remember about the 1980s, and if you remember any of this type of thing. And so I'd just love to hear from you because you guys teach me so much. Next week we're going to talk about the 1990s, and then the week after that we're going to wrap it up with 2000s, and then I'll go on to another topic. So I hope you've enjoyed this history series. I just want to say thank you for listening. I love you. I appreciate you. And I will see you on the next video. Bye-bye.